Last Friday, we discussed some of I gave an introduction to the philosophical religious implications of the modern physics in contrast to the classical physics, the Newtonian physics. And we said developments in modern physics, new physics, especially relativity, quantum theory, Big Bang theory, chaos theory, are very good news for the believers because they are loaded with mystical, theological, philosophical overtones. So it is very worth pursuing these theories. That was the focal point of our reflection. Then to indicate and to highlight as to some of the important interdisciplinary elements emerging from the new physics, we had some discussion on some theological paradoxes which may be informed by these modern theories of physics. For that, I introduced to you some statements from the scripture, out of context, certainly not to prove them. Can there be three in just one? Can somebody enter the room while the doors are closed? Is there any rational credibility for our belief in the resurrection of the bodies? Is belief in eternal life merely a leap of faith? Can we be, as rational beings, believe in eternal life? Physics should be informing us about these things. And in order to answer these questions, we said we need to have a new vision of the fundamental epistemic categories with which we construct philosophy and theology. A altogether new epistemology is required, and that epistemology is a compulsion from the theories of physics. What is time? Aristotelian Thomistic understanding of time and space are too old-fashioned to be the foundations of theology in our times. But unfortunately, our mainstream theologies are still founded upon the classical epistemology, the so-called Aristotelian Thomistic perennial philosophy. Matter and spirit, we consider them as dualistic binaries, opposite categories. Can they be so? Body and soul. This is one of the central emphasis of the mainstream theology. Should we have such a radical opposition between body and soul? The world that we are living in is a three-dimensional world in the Aristotelian worldview. Is our world just three-dimensional in modern physics? Now, if our world is not three-dimensional, does it have anything to suggest for the glorification of matter, the transcendence of the bodies? Does it suggest anything proximity with the understanding of spirit or soul? This is how we outlined the problem in the previous lecture. And today we will go a little more deep into this one, and we will also shed some more light on another central concept, point of theological debate, that is the concept of miracles. The last week, we just recollected cited three instances from the sacred scripture: the healing clay, the speaking donkey, the shouting stones, not to prove them literally. For us, appropriated from the point of view of modern physics, these are metaphors suggestive of the rich potentialities of matter. It is within this fabric of the incredible potentialities and possibilities that matter is endowed with that we look at the transcendence of matter, or the resurrection in theological terms, eternal life or the eternity of time, the unity between body and soul, this re-enchantment of the cosmos at large, the re-sacralization of the universe at large. Okay. Now, this point also explained in the last class. There are a lot many trans-historical elements to the historical incidents that we are discussing in the sacred scriptures. Say, for instance, the resurrection narratives cannot be fully subsumed within the historical fabric of the narratives. There is so much of elusiveness. That element we call the trans-historical elements or the trans-temporal. Materiality and transmateriality being intersected in the resurrection narratives. That is how the glorified body or the risen body is able to enter the room when the door is shut from within. The proximity between temporality and trans-temporality, or historicity and trans-historicity, therefore suggestive of the transmaterial nature of the very matter itself. Beyond the matter, that is coming close to the idea of the spirit. Okay, so today what we are going to do, we wish to develop this point further, although I have anticipated some of the arguments already. We will be revisiting the ideas of the scientific ideas of matter, space, and time. As with sufficient background in philosophy, I believe all of you know what is the definition of matter now in philosophy. Matter is that which is extended in space and time. That is why we, in revisioning matter, we need also to redefine space and time as well. This should be contrasted with the exclusively materialistic or reductionistic understanding of matter in Newtonian mechanics, which tended to be atheistic, not just tended to be, whereby the irony of this situation, despite the founding fathers being very strong believers, was atheism. Mechanical philosophy, Newtonian mechanics. Okay, so the modern understanding, the new physics understanding of matter, space, and time, we are contrasting with the atheistic or the materialistic understanding of matter, space, and time in classical physics. Okay, this is our logic goes. Revisioning matter, space, and time from the perspective of modern physics. This is the thesis that we have got to prove. What is that? The new understanding of matter, space, and time provides a scientifically plausible, rational credibility to dogmatic assumptions on soul, resurrection, eternal life, Trinity, miracles, etc. These are central theological categories, most foundational theological themata in the Christian tradition we know. Soul, resurrection, eternity, Trinity, miracles. As I have been always cautioning you, I am not going to prove that these things are established by modern physics. No. Rather, there is better rational scope for subscribing to these articles of faith. That is our point. Okay. Let us take up matter first. What is matter for modern physics? Actually, a bit of background in particle physics is necessary for understanding this discussion. I will not go anything that technical. If you wish, I have the video recordings of the classes by reputed scientists on our faculty itself. Last year, I had invited them. I will share all those lectures also with them. But I think being too technical may be a bit far-fetched for you. May not be necessary for our discussion. So, in a layman's language, this is how I would present it. Say, look at an apple. Apple is made up of molecules. Molecules are made up of atoms. Atoms have a nucleus at the center. electrons around them. Nucleus is made up of protons and neutrons. And going beyond the protons, we understand protons are made up of quarks, and electrons, according to string theory, is by string. This is how the voyage into the interior of matter goes. This is particle physics. The tool with which particle physics is progressing, the theoretical tool, is quantum theory, quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics, as you know, mechanics is that branch of physics dealing with the movement of bodies. Mechanics. And quantum mechanics would mean that branch of mechanics dealing with the movement of quantum particles. Quantum particles are the most fundamental particles, the subatomic particles, with which everything is made up of. Say, before the development of the new physics, we had only up to protons, neutrons, and electrons. Now physics has gone far beyond that. So this is how the understanding of matter in modern physics go. See, when we divide hadrons, protons, actually in place of hadrons, you can put protons. We have quarks and antiquarks, the positively charged particles. Now going through the negative family of the electrons, called leptons in large, we have electrons as well as the charged neutrinos. Then these quarks and leptons are bound together by the four fundamental forces of nature, namely gravitational force, electromagnetic force, strong nuclear force, weak nuclear force. Doesn't matter if it does not make sense to you, it presupposes fundamental physics. Not all men may have that background, but just understand this is what the state of affairs are. Okay, ultimately, what we have today in physics are quarks, leptons, and forces. Those are the basic building blocks of nature as far as the present day developments in physics is concerned. Quarks, leptons, and forces. Okay, this is how the three generations of particle physics would go. See, 6 quarks, 6 leptons, and force-carrying particles, 4 of them. But look at this slide very closely. You see something more here other than quarks, leptons, and forces. What is that? You find an H particle called the Higgs boson. By the by, the physicist who proposed the Higgs boson passed away. Who was that? Who is that? Recently, last week, he passed away. Peter Higgs, the original proponent of the Higgs boson, which is nicknamed as God particle. What is this God particle all about now? See, say, this is my cell. This is made up of matter, all of us know. Because this is a body, in order that it be constituted into a body, this must be made up of particles. If only particles have mass, they will be combining themselves into a material form. Our human bodies themselves, unless all the particles with which our bodies were made up had mass in themselves, we would have been simply floating as subatomic particles through empty space. We would have never, these particles would have never come together and formed a body. Now, the fundamental question is, where do particles get mass from? Where does, particles mass from? And Peter Higgs proposed that there must be a universal cosmic mass-giving particle to a particle that gives mass to all other particles in the universe. This must be present all over the space. Then only it can give particles to all the mass to all the particles. But at the same time, it is remaining invisible for so long a time. Despite scientists' rigorous research for so long years, they were not able to detect this particle. Omnipresent and invisible. These are the two attributes of God we know in classical philosophy. Therefore, this particle meets this condition. It is present, it should be present everywhere, it remains invisible. Therefore, this particle was nicknamed as God particle. Not that this is a particle with which God is made up of. There is so much of popular misconception about this Higgs boson. Okay, that is why this particle was nicknamed as God particle. Scientific name is Higgs boson. Peter Higgs predicted it in 1960s. I think somewhere in 2012 or something. Kindly check the exact year. This particle was discovered in the CERN experimental lab at CERN in Switzerland, in the Large Hadron Collider. That was a big headline in the mass media altogether, the discovery of the God particle. Now, look behind that Higgs boson, what do you see? Something like a cloud, a big cloud you see there. This is to say, this is called the Higgs field. If you would permit me a bit of theological license, what science says today is that in the beginning there was Higgs field. That is to say, there was an all-pervasive energy field occupying the entire space in the universe. Actually, this slide that you are seeing is a slide pertaining to Big Bang theory. When we come to cosmology, we will discuss in detail. The present-day interpretation of the Big Bang theory is that space and time originated only with the Big Bang. Okay, space-time originated only with the Big Bang. But with the discovery of the God particle, scientists have modified this idea. Of course, this is still in the experimental phase. What they say, probably space-time existed even before Big Bang. Big Bang is not exactly the ultimate origin of the universe. We will explain it in detail when we deal with Big Bang. A scientist will be explaining to you these points. Okay. Same. Space-time probably, was it eternal? Anyway, every likelihood that there is that space and time existed before Big Bang. So for Big Bang itself has been formed out of an energy fluctuation in the Higgs field, which occupied the universe altogether. In the beginning, there was energy in the universe. Where did this energy exist? Probably in an eternal space-time, out of which the Big Bang singularity was formed, probably following a quantum fluctuation. This is how scientists understand the origin of the cosmos today. Therefore, we have gone to the origins now. In the beginning, ultimately, where are we now? When we go into the interior of matter, we are at an energy field, a cosmic universal energy field, which probably pre-existed all material particles in the universe. It is out of which everything has been formed. This is the reason why Einstein said matter is nothing but a form of energy, that famous equation, E is equal to mc square. All of us are bundles of energy. And there was an old, okay, I'm anticipating, occasionally I jump into theological statements immediately, but eventually we will come to that. There was an old argument for resurrection from theory of relativity. Relativity says that matter is energy. Energy can neither be created nor be destroyed. It can only be transformed into various forms. And some theologians have argued it in favor of resurrection. Our bodies cannot be eternally be perishing. Energies are only transforming. Anyway, I have given you enough scientific input to confuse you, I think. That confusion alone is very positive and rewarding. If you are confused enough, I am successful, I think. So this is the modern physics of quantum particle physics using the tools of the theoretical physics quantum theory. They were penetrating from depth to depth into the interior of matter, in search of the most indivisible unit of matter. An American physicist, Heinz Pagels, would say, this search for the basic building blocks of the universe through physics is something like a crusade against an illusion. We are never going to land on anything, the fundamental particle, it seems. Physical reality is something like a cosmic onion with a level below, level below, level below, level below, level. It is possible that these levels may never come to an end also. That is a scenario with particle physics today. Okay. And these are the four fundamental forces I already told, very important. 4 seconds. Okay. At this point, Nick Herbert, another American theoretical physicist, the author of quantum reality. But he says, no, a famous statement. The best kept secret in physics today is that the physicists have lost their grip on reality. That is the most secret thing in physics, it seems. Physicists have lost the grip over reality. Paul Dirac is a theoretical physicist. I don't have a pen here with me. Theoretical physicist, one of the founding fathers of quantum theory. This is how he would begin his class on quantum physics. He will take a piece of chalk and break it into two. Then he will tell his students, see, in classical physics, in Newtonian physics, this chalk has got two possibilities. One piece here, the other piece here, two broken pieces. But I tell you, in quantum physics, this chalk has a third possibility. What is that third possibility? The chalk remains unbroken even after breaking it. How could that be? It sounds absolutely nonsensical, no? But this is the nonsense that we call quantum theory. By means of superposition, this is perfectly possible, it seems. Then he will drop that chalk onto the floor. He will ask his students to pick up the pieces. How many pieces have you collected? 4 pieces you have got. No, I tell you, you have collected 2 original chalks. This like is saying that I am dropping my watch on the floor. Instead of breaking into springs and glasses and pieces, I am getting 4 or 5 original watches. This is the quantum paradox. This is the mystery with the matter today as encountered by quantum physics. It is these paradoxes that lead physicists to say that reality question become very puzzling in quantum mechanics. Some of the quantum paradoxes, wave-particle duality. Something can be a wave and a particle at the same time. In terms of Fritjof in his bestseller Tao of Physics, this is how he would present it. Matter at the most foundational level is only a tendency to exist. And subatomic events are mere tendencies to occur, not real events or real facts, real existent realities. No, they are quasi-realities. Matter in the quantum world is only a quasi-reality. Matter, therefore, is immaterial. Don't jump to the conclusion that matter is therefore spirit. That will be too strong a theological term. Certainly, we can use our hermeneutics to speculatively argue that there is a mystery dimension to matter. But still, physics is still physics. It doesn't have to do with spirit or anything. Anyway, this is a severe jolt to materialism, this kinds of understanding. This point only. Again, another paradox that quantum physicists are encountering is the non-distinction between subject and object. I, the speaking subject, and you, the listening object, is here. That is why this communication is possible, isn't it? For an action to occur, there must be a subject and an object with action. But in the quantum world, there is no subject-object distinction. That is to say, the observing scientist and the observed or the measured object get fused into one entity. This has no macroscopic analog as such. There are no examples that we can cite from the macroscopic world. Later on, you can read this imagination that Nick Herbert, the physicist, has given. As Max Born, quantum physicist, enters his bubble chamber, centuries of Newtonian certainties vanish in an instant. Solid objects melt into the undivided wholeness as he enters the place without separation. Max mixes with the mystery when his subject-object membrane dissolves. In tune with totality, Max creates a new universe faster than light wherever he turns his omnipotent gaze. See, this is the statement by a renowned theoretical physicist to convey this paradox. Oppenheimer is very famous now with the film Oppenheimer. Okay. The leader of the Manhattan Project. This is how he was very well articulated the paradox that we are encountering with an electron in the quantum world. If you ask, for instance, whether the position of the electron remains the same, we must say no. And if you ask whether the electron's position changes with time, we must say no. These are contradictory statements, but the answer is the same. If you ask whether the electron is at rest, we must say no. If you ask whether it is in motion, we must say no. This is the paradox. Another reality interpretation of the quantum matter paradox is the correlation of matter with the consciousness. This has got a lot of borrowers today, not only in the scientific community, among philosophers also certainly. And this is a theme that is so dear to the philosophers, that the entire matter is somehow endowed with the consciousness. There is a phenomenon called a quantum jump. Sorry for this technicality. That is to say, when scientists are measuring a particle, particles are endowed with accompanied by a proxy wave. The nature of the proxy wave is that it must expand, but when the observer is looking at this object, instead of expanding, the wave is shrinking. This is called the collapse of the wave function, or in popular terms, the quantum jump in the measurement act, the quantum jump. Now the question, everything in the experimental setup is made up of matter. The experimental apparatus, the observed particles. The only thing that is lying outside the monopoly of matter here is the observer's consciousness. Therefore, Hungarian physicist Newman and his team would say, quantum jump is therefore an attempt of nature to break the partition between matter and mind. Quantum physics thus prepares a new dialogue between humans and nature. The so-called dead inert nature, the material nature, universe, is now endowed with the germinal forms of consciousness. Every particle of dust is therefore conscious, if this interpretation is correct. But this is well debated, not subscribed by all physicists, but this only gaining more and more currency nowadays, we could say, given the recent developments in physics. Matter as conscious. These points are very important for us to reconceive our idea of soul. As for traditional theology, consciousness or our rational property was considered to be the standard for the presence of spirituality or soul within us. Now, what is not endowed with the consciousness? Yes, soul is therefore essentially universal, we should say. There is no being which is not endowed with the soul. Could we be thinking so? Another paradox is non-locality in quantum mechanics. Non-locality, what is that, no? And the exponents of this non-local principle were awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics, I think 5 years ago. Check that, please. Okay. This is called, what is that now? In ordinary terms, I can say there is a phenomenon called the principle of local causes. Einstein's relativity theory said that nothing can travel faster than light. Nothing can travel faster than light. Therefore, in order that two events be connected, maximum they can be connected only by light signals. Now, Barnabas is attending this class possibly from Kenya. I am here speaking here. I am clapping my hand here. There is an agreement between me and Barnabas that when I clap my hand, Barnabas also should be clapping his hands. I clapped hands. Barnabas also clapped hands. In order that Barnabas be clapping his hands, he should see me clapping my hands. For that, light signal should reach from me to Barnabas. Then only after that only he can be clapping his hands. There will be a fraction of second gap. But in physics, this principle is violated. The very moment instantaneously, Barnabas claps his hands with me. How is it possible? Physics has no answer to that. That is why principle of locality is gone. No matter must be non-local. Everything in the universe must be connected in an immediate, intimate, strange manner. That is the point about it. Some explanations are already in physics. Everything has come out of the Higgs energy field. Matter is basically energy. Energy is not confined to space and time. Somehow, despite our materialization of the individualization of matter into distinct and discrete objects, there is something that is foundationally and fundamentally connecting us. Okay, this scientific principle used here is the two-particle system of zero spin. I'm not going into those technical details. I hope you got the idea. So you find there are so many strange things that we can say about matter in the new physics, especially in quantum physics. Again, about chaos theory, advocated by Lawrence Edward, we will have an exclusive class on chaos theory itself by Kuruvula Pandigat, who is a specialist in chaos theory, possibly next one itself if I am able to complete this session today. Okay. What does it say now? If a butterfly is flapping its wings here, right now I am in Delhi, in our religious house here in Delhi. Suppose a butterfly is flapping its wings once right in front of our apartment. There will be a hurricane, say, 4 years later in Texas in the US. Now, suppose this butterfly forgot to flap its wings, or it happened to flap its wings twice. An extreme tsunami in Japan 6 years later. Slight difference in the initial conditions, but the results emerging from that can be, the macroscopic results emerging out of that can be so distinct, with extreme properties, extreme drought and extreme flood. These things can happen. Okay, this is the idea of chaos theory. 1 minute. Class that is chaos theory. So it happened. Maybe I will leave it to Kuruvula for explaining the details later. So you may have perhaps heard about this proverb: for want of nail, the shoe was lost. For want of a shoe, the horse was lost. For want of a horse, the rider was lost. For want of a rider, the message was lost. For want of a message, the battle was lost. For want of a battle, the kingdom was lost. Which means for want of a nail, the kingdom was lost. Chaos theory, butterfly effect, slight difference in initial condition, so distinct macroscopic results. Size paradox in physics altogether, 10 to the power of minus 31 meter, the smallest scale that is Planck length possible in physics. And the enormous mysteries that such an infinitely small particle is exhibiting. The entire cosmos can be understood. The mysteries of cosmos can be understood provided we understand the full nuances of a subatomic particle at the Planck scale. But we cannot do that. This is a size paradox. The British poet William Blake has sung the famous lines, "One can see a whole universe in a grain of sand, a whole heaven in a drop of water. To hold infinity in the palm of your hands and eternity in an hour." In Tao offices, Fritjof Capra is citing Blake's lines. Basically, that is what the physics also implies analogically. The boundary of a particle is the boundary of this cosmos itself. The entire cosmos is contained in a single particle. If you would permit me now, can you recollect something of what I taught you in the introduction to Hinduism in our second course? I had drawn your attention to a metaphor used in Buddhism, the jewel net. What does it say? This is a metaphor, a beautiful net is hung in the heaven of the god Indra. That net is filled with beautiful jewels. The feature of these jewels is that each one reflects all other jewels in the net. Not only that, each reflected jewel in the net reflects all other jewels in the net plus all other reflected jewels in the jewels. Further, each reflected jewels in the reflected jewels of the jewels reflect all other jewels plus all other reflected jewels plus all other reflected jewels in the reflected jewels of the jewels. I can go on speaking infinitely like that. What does it mean now? This is a beautiful idea of the interconnectedness of the universe. The net stands for the cosmos, and each jewel stands for each being in the universe, each object. Everything is present in everything. That is the idea here. Paul Davies, the famous Australian physicist, I quote him often. What he says now, the time is coming in physics whereby we could say the entire cosmos can be reduced to a single equation like H2O. The whole cosmos is simply a drop of water. Actually, what he means is that he is imagining, hypothesizing the synthesis of the four fundamental forces of nature. That will be a theory of everything, a father theory, a mother theory, a GUT, grand unified theory. Okay, in one single equation, we will be able to describe the entire universe. I'm just slightly philosophizing here, I know. Einstein was given a compass when he was just 2.5 years old. Later in his autobiography, he is recollecting this event and says that compass gave him the awareness that there is something hidden behind the things. Einstein believed that there is an opaque depth of mystery lurking behind the ordinary objects that we daily tread on but notice not. Even a blade of grass, it inhabits an opaque depth of mystery for Einstein. Okay. Now, this is some introduction to quantum matter mysteries. Some philosophical reflections I already made. Citing some theologians again, this implies a revised conceptual milieu for theology. There may be limits to rational inquiry. This comes from the central principle in quantum theory, the uncertainty principle. I did not explain to you that. That was founded by Werner Heisenberg and Niels Bohr, the two prominent figures in the development of the quantum theory. Position and momentum cannot be measured exactly and simultaneously. That is the idea of uncertainty or indeterminacy principle. What it implies philosophically, no? Ultimately, we are never going to know the universe in its fullest detail. There will be how far science may advance, there will be a fundamental incompleteness or uncertainty to the ultimate knowledge. This is what uncertainty principle implies. And where is God in this picture, in this network? Some say the universe is self-consistent and only the self-consistency of the universe is enough to explain the mysteries of nature. I have no difficulty in subscribing to this one. The universe can be self-consistent, but that does not imply a negation of God. For me, then God will be the self of this self-consistency. That is how ontologically we can be invoking God in any situation that may seem to be sitting awkwardly with religion or theology. So friends, as science religion theorists, you must understand that how sophisticated scientific knowledge may be, even though all the traditional conventional theological doctrines and concepts may be radically challenged by sciences. Theology does not, or religion or faith does not have to be feeling uncomfortable about that. Creative minds can always reconcile science and religion brilliantly in newer and newer ways. That we need to know. That is the advantage of dialoguing with the sciences. We will have new theologies, new philosophies, new categories. That is important. Okay. Robert John Russell. He is the founder of the Center for Theology and Natural Sciences in Berkeley, California, along with, who is that, Professor Jerry?
Yes, I know. I forgot his name right now, but
Robert John Russell and the present, anyway, he's a good friend of mine. Sorry, I cannot recollect that. Okay. What he says now, Russell is a physicist. What he says now, quantum statistics can also provide a new metaphor for surprise. Nature is full of the unpredictable and expect the unexpected is the norm. One prepares a sample containing trillions of identical atoms and simply weighs. Suddenly, atoms literally at random begin to decay. Expect the unexpected is the norm of nature. John Pockingham, another renowned science religion theorist who passed away, I think, only 2-3 years ago, or 2 years ago, I think. John Pockingham, Cambridge-based scientist, and he was an Anglican priest as well. After his career in physics, he wanted to become a clergyman. That is what he says now. Quantum physics implies a hidden dimension to the ordinary experiences of daily living, like hearing, touching, measuring, moving, etc. Through the metaphor of nature as hidden, quantum physics illumines the existence of the mysterious within the mundane. Nature discloses a mysterious quality and an extraordinary reality otherwise enclosed within the everyday attire. Those statements are clear in themselves. Let us read the first paragraph again from Russell. We can construct a new view of special providence, which holds both that God acts in the world objectively. Okay. Then read that second paragraph, please. Where is God in this picture? God is all over the place or space. God is up there, down here, inside my skin and out. God is the web, the energy, the space, the light. Don't catch it in them. The singular vast net of relationship that animates everything that is. This is the new idea of God, not the Aristotelian God, transcendental, first to cause the creator. The immanent and indwelling God who perhaps evolves itself into the world. Matter is energeia deo. Matter is the energy of God. This was the statement of this is the famous statement by the church father Gregory of Nyssa. What is the idea? Again, the idea here is a kind of immanence or emergence we should be saying here. This is how we should look at God in the context of the new world view from physics. God who is so close to the world, not just present in the world, but completely permeating the entire universe. Perhaps the world itself, God itself, turning out to be the world. Something like that we can Mark William Worthing, Australian theologian, the bare fact of interconnectedness alone provides a foundation on which theology can build a confession of the continuing sustenance of God in a way that is intelligible to the modern mind. Okay. This is from William Steger, American physicist and theologian, Jesuit priest. He passed away because of cancer, I think in 2014. Quantum cosmological data helps us to articulate authentically and truthfully who we really are, what the world and universe really is, and who God really is or is not. And there are several such things that we can be citing in this context here. Okay. So friends, what discussion had we been making now? In order to revision the traditional categories of soul, matter, spirit, space, time, we were dwelling on the new idea of matter in the subatomic physics, the quantum physics, and some of its philosophical, theological implications we have been telling. So we said matter and spirit proximity, that is indicative of the body-soul proximity. That is suggestive of the cosmicality of consciousness. And these elements are very foundational to theology, these sort of perspectives. They imply some points of departure from the conventional theology, at the same time rich with new theological overtones. Okay. So matter. There are some questions. Let me see, something is there in the chat. The discovery of the Higgs boson God particle is not inherently in conflict with the theology? Christopher, not clear to me what makes you think that this is in conflict with the theology. Not at all. In a way, we must say this is a positive blessing for theology that Higgs boson has been discovered. If we consider God as a material particle, that is poor theology. We will never consider that. By God particle, we do not mean the particles with which God is made up of, not at all. God particle gives a theoretical explanation for the origin of mass for all the particles. Therefore, the theories of physics get better consistency. Overall consistency better is there with the discovery of Higgs boson. One way, laymen in science-religion dialogue may not want the Higgs boson to be discovered. For him or her, God is a God of the gaps. Wherever there are explanatory gaps in science, we will invoke and insert God therein as the explanation. This is Newton's famous God of the gaps. This is how Newton defended the existence of God. But the problem with that is as science advances, gaps will be filled up and the God of the gaps will be eliminated. Answer to this answer is that as science advances, newer and newer gaps are opened. God of the gaps also survives forever. Anyway, God of the gaps is not a sound theology. We need not defend the existence of God in the ignorance about the origin of mass for particles. It is not in lack of knowledge, not in obscurity or ignorance. Rather, it is in the known, in knowledge that we encounter God, not in the unknown in science. That is how science enhances our idea of God, vision of God. There is God because there are so many things which science cannot explain. Certainly, we can argue it rationally, but I would say there is God because the discoveries in science are very vividly suggesting such sort of a tangible metaphysics. This is a positive way of approaching science-religion dialogue. My preference would be for the latter. So in Higgs, the discovery of Higgs boson is not at all a bad news for theology. Rather, this is a blessing in disguise. Not even in disguise, plainly. How? Because, as I cited Gregory of Nyssa, the entire matter is energeia devo, God's energy. See, such a new theology is brought in. A cosmic theology is brought in. An indwelling, immanent idea of God is brought in with the discovery of the Higgs field, the universal Higgs field. So there are so many explanations that we can give to that. Okay. Then again, as a student, where is that? As a student, I was taught energy is never lost and is a fundamental principle in physics known as the law of conservation. Sorry, I'm missing that. It states that energy fully transformed from one form to another. This means that any process, the total amount of energy remains constant. For example, when you burn wood, the chemical energy is stored in the wood and heat. This principle is crucial in understanding various natural phenomena and is the cornerstone of modern physics. So after our death, we are transformed into another form. Very good, Christopher. You are trying to theologize on this scientific data from physics. Very good. Actually, what you are referring to is the second law, no? Yeah, the second law of thermodynamics. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed, but only be transformed into various forms. That is a valid, rational attempt that you have made. Ultimately, even our matter will be existing in some other form. That's why I already made this remark that in the old theology, there was this recourse to Einstein's mass energy equivalence, apologetically argued for the resurrection of the bodies. It is possible that in death we are transformed into another form. This can be rationally and legitimately argued from that point. And at the end of this discussion, I need not revisit your question, but better clarity will be there for your question when I explain something from Frank Tipler. What he says, no, the entire energy in the universe, the entire matter in the universe will be converging into a singularity of consciousness. Jerry, you wanted to say something? No, oh, sorry. Okay, in a singularity of consciousness, that is to say, the entire cosmos will be transformed into a temple of consciousness alone as a result of information processing, developments in technology, as a result of the fine-tuning of the cosmos, as a result of the linear ascent of time. So many things Frank Tipler is positing in his The Physics of Immortality. If time permits, at the end, we can say something more about that. That is more philosophical than scientific, but based on fundamental scientific principles. He is using a lot of theological license in speculating likewise. Okay. Okay, does anybody have any other question or comments about the discussion that we had so far? Before I continue with this discussion, already we are 1 hour past, I think.
Father, what about Teilhard de Chardin? His view of the
yeah, Professor Jerry, Teilhard's point, I deliberately did not bring in Teilhard here. In fact, Teilhard is a very solid reference herein. But if you like to continue with Frank Tipler, he speaks about omega point. I said about the convergence of the entire matter in the universe into a singularity of consciousness. Singularity is a point of limit or boundary where all the currently known laws of physics will be breaking down, beyond which science cannot go. Black hole is a singularity. Big Bang is a singularity. Likewise, finally, the universe will be ending up in a singularity of consciousness, Frank Tipler says. And then he says, this point may be called as the omega point. Sorry, 1 minute, I am just breaking. In half a minute, I will be back. I have a guest here. Sorry, okay. So, what Tipler speaks about is the omega point that he calls the universal resurrection. A scientist is arguing likewise. This is exactly what they are said. The law of complexity consciousness finally culminating in the omega point, and that he identifies with a personal principle, Christ. Everything culminating in Christ, everything being consumed in Christ for Teilhard. So that complementarity is very clear between the theology of physics and the Teilhardian perspective. Of course, Teilhard was not much informed about the developments in modern physics. He was mostly a paleontologist, but he would have been very happy to see this development, I think. Further, how does quantum physics is related to spirituality? Yeah, Wycliffe, that is what I have been trying to articulate here in all. If you can recollect those statements by those reputed science religion theorists or theologians like William Steger, John Pockinnon, Robert Russell, Mark Worthing, all of them are related to theology and spirituality as well. If you are keen about the explicit implications for spirituality, just to recollect our cosmic fraternity with the rest of the creation. We humans do not occupy a pinnacle status in creation. We are only a strand in a web of relations. That is the implication of the cosmic interconnectedness. That is the implication of matter being endowed with the consciousness. Traditional catechism had been telling us that only we humans have got a soul. And this may be disturbing to some of you who are not very well, do not have adequate background in theology, that it is going against the teachings of Christianity that only we humans have got soul. But be assured that I myself have participated in a number of science theology conferences where these ideas, patronized by Vatican itself, where these ideas are seriously discussed. Okay, so if we consider consciousness or rationality as the standard of the presence of the soul, soul is universal, we must say. Every being, even a piece of stone, is endowed with a soul. And this is not a new idea that I am telling you. This is a stream of theology that unfortunately did not get developed in the course of theological development. Kindly read the letter of St. Paul to Romans, chapter 8, I think 18 to 28 something. The entire creation is groaning in birth pang for its redemption as the children of God. Not only we who are the firstborns in creation, entire creation has got its cosmic transcendence. Not only for humans. Unfortunately, as a result of the entanglement of Christian theology with the Western metaphysics, our idea of God, idea of soul, idea of human, they were very much sectarian or compartmentalized. Now, new physics is helping us to shed off our anthropocentric flavors in theology, we could say. A kind of cosmic vision. This is already there in Bible. Again, the idea of soul. If you go to the original idea, etymological meaning of the term soul, no, the terms used in the original Hebrew are bara, nefesh, ruach, and so on. Original Hebrew terms. And all these terms imply a very synthetic understanding of both body and soul, soul and body, matter and spirit, not just soul alone. Nowadays only we have this, but with the New Testament being written under the influence of the Greek philosophy and Greek categories, this body-soul dualism crept in mainstream Christian theology. Otherwise, the original Old Testament Hebrew idea of soul is something cosmic, universal, doing away with the dualistic or binary understanding of body and soul. So this is the spirituality that we should be drawing from quantum mechanics. Interrelatedness, the soulishness, the sacredness of the matter, the enchanted universe. Take off the shoes from your feet, for the land where you stand is holy. Wycliffe, this is the spirituality of quantum mechanics. The entire creation is a Mount Tabor, as for us Christians who are believers, where every particle of dust and every bush is burning with the fire of Christ. Because according to Johannine Logos theology, it is with Christ that the entire creation is made up. You know, this is the spirituality of quantum mechanics. Okay, sir. Then how does quantum physics and can quantum physics disprove God? Not at all. There are, in fact, religious, of course, there are many, say Stephen Weinberg, one important cosmologist. He did not believe in God. The Peter Higgs, the very exponent of the Higgs boson, he was an atheist who went deep into the, but you know, their philosophy and theology is too naive. They are not good philosophers or theologians. They don't know what theology is basically. Personally, given their empirical determinism, they cannot go beyond what they are experimenting. So their statements or their subjective perspectives cannot be considered as the norm for belief or non-belief from quantum mechanics. Anyway, the general tendency is that with the emergence of new physics, with Einstein's relativity and quantum mechanics, religious belief has only gained greater respectability. Only the Newtonian materialistic physics tended to rule out God as an old-fashioned concept. Most prominent founding fathers of quantum mechanics were not exactly believing in a personal God. That is not the concern of physics. They believed in some kind of a cosmic order. As for most physicists, cosmic order is God, the divine. Anyway, there is orderliness, there is beauty, there is elegance in creation. At least all scientists are acknowledging this. And as for us believers, this self of the self-consistency of the universe. That is the term I used. Even if the universe is self-consistent, it has a self, and that self is the divine, we say. Not the God who sits in a glass house behind the clouds, the transcendental God, but rather the God who is immanent and indwelling in this world. God who evolves himself into this world, a world which is emanating out of the divine. Such kind of images of God are very important. And keep in mind that these sort of images that are consistent with the quantum worldview is very important for handling the contemporary generation as science legend theorist. Stephen Hawking has strongly come against belief in God. What place then for a creator? This is what his bestseller says, no? Universe has no beginning in space and time. It is internal. Therefore, what place then for a creator? This is a very, very poor philosophical statement. That is why Quentin Smith, the president of the International Atheistic Society then, he said that this is the poorest argument for atheism from Western philosophy. About Hawking's work, he said. Reason? The idea of God is very poor therein. Okay. Richard Dawkins comes with strong attack on God, the Old Testament God. All at least 100 epithets he is using, the lustful, bloodthirsty God of the Old Testament. But even a layman, even a catechism student know the image of God that he is coining has nothing to do with the God of theology or God of faith. This we need to be careful. So when we think that quantum physics has spoiled or destroyed the image of God, rather than destroying the image of God, I would say this is a deconstruction of the limited images of God or parochial ideas of God, and a reconstruction of God in more cosmic, holistic, spiritual, universal, personal categories. I would say that. That is how I would love to prefer it. Okay. Uncertainty principle would also be a contradiction against the character of all-knowing God. See, this is from Aaron Gonsalves. Not quite Aaron, I would say, because it is uncertainty principle is with regard to the indeterminacy of the laws that is governing the universe. It speaks for the elements of unpredictability in the universe, the ultimate incomprehensibility of nature. It is not about the knowledge of God that we are saying. In other words, theologically, what we are saying is that we are not going to know, when we say there is an ultimate limitation to the knowledge of the universe, we say ultimately through physical methodologies alone or scientific method alone, we are not going to know God. Provided the new image of God that we have from quantum physics, we must consider God as the self of the world, God as the law of all the laws of nature, and therefore, with the laws that God created for the world, we cannot fully comprehend the lawgiver himself. Okay, that is how we should understand that. Therefore, there is an incompatibility of methodologies involved when we say that uncertainty principle limits the knowledge of God also. That is not how we understand that we have prescribed the definitions of God altogether. Otherwise, in the Indian tradition, this is there already. Immanuel Kant has said that the phenomenon and noumenon. The noumenon cannot be fully known. We will never know reality in itself, because that is the domain of metaphysics, not of scientific certitude, scientific experimentation. Okay, that's why it says incompatible. Again, in the Indian tradition, in the Hindu mysticism, there is this profound metaphor or great saying in the ancient scripture called neti neti. Na idi, na idi. This is a Sanskrit formulation. What it means now? Not this, not that. That is to say, how much you may describe God, they all are helpful for depicting God. That is true. But God cannot be subsumed or is exhausted by all these categories. Language is very limited to describe God. It is a matter of experience, therefore. That is the meaning of neti neti. So, God's omniscience and the physical uncertainty are not contradictory. That is how theology also have conceived it. That is why I went to take recourse to these other religious traditions also. Okay, Wycliffe has another question. I agree with you, Father. Christians' approach to physics lies in the conviction that the world in the entirety and every detail is an effected word, logos, a personal creative activity of God. Yeah, very good, Wycliffe. Thanks for this compliment. Not just a compliment, he is complimenting the theology of quantum mechanics from the Logos theology in the Johannine Gospel. We are considering the world as mere matter, is it not? That is what quantum mechanics is studying. No, what is Matter in Christian theology, nothing was created except in and through him. In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God. The Word was God. Everything was created in and through the Logos. If you would permit me to use formulate a crude sentence, which is theologically not justified, I would say Christ is the raw material out of which the entire universe is made. This is what theology is telling us. Christ is no matter, we certainly know, but in an understandable terms, I am trying to formulate that. And it is this raw material that physics is studying, therefore. So physics is therefore Christology in disguise. That is how we should understand that. Anyway, I am very glad that you are following up the discussion and you are also very creative and hermeneutical in trying to appropriate these points. That is very good. So you are trying to make a sense out of it. So although we may not be able to complete all that we have discussed today, I'm glad that you have followed as much. That is important. Okay, does anybody have any other questions? So we have the discussion. I am not sure if I should move on to the discussion on space now. Maybe I will add that. I will go a little fast here. Space, Einsteinian understanding of curved space, black hole. In cosmology, we can discuss those things in detail. Anyway, just understand that in new physics with quantum physics and relativity theory, we have traveled far beyond the three-dimensional space, length, width, and height. These are the three dimensions of space we know. A train on a track, it can move only forward and backward. This is a one-dimensional movement. Only length is there. A ship on the surface of the ocean, forward, backward, and sideways movement is possible. Two-dimensional space. Width also is there. An aeroplane, length is there, width is there. It can move also upward and downward. So we say height also is there. Now, can you imagine anything that is moving with a greater freedom than this one? Don't have to be straining your brains. Our universe is three-dimensional. The maximum freedom that we have in this macroscopic world is a three-dimensional movement. All of us are three-dimensional beings. All of us are three-dimensional beings. This is the perfect experience that we can have. That's why now we call 3D movie, 4D movie, 10D movie, and so on. 4D movie, 5D, all these are optical illusions that we are creating. 3D is the best experience that we can have in three dimensions. Now, I am modifying whatever I said so far. Our universe is not three-dimensional. Minimum four-dimensional, that is well established by relativity theory. What is the fourth dimension? Fourth dimension is the relativity of time. Space and time are not two distinct things, but one and the same thing. Time is the fourth dimension of space. This is what Einstein discovered. Then only the paradoxes of relativity will make sense. It needs a lot of mathematical explanation. We will have to consult those studious and serious about this science. We'll have to consult some. If you need, I can arrange some physicists to discuss this point mathematically. Okay, space is four-dimensional. I already said, I think in the first lecture, space and time were written with and separated as two words. With Einstein, we started writing as a hyphenated one word. Today, the hyphen also is gone. Space-time is one word today. Somehow we have the intuition of space and time being one in our mind. Say I make a statement. The aeroplane was hijacked. I am making this statement. Immediately you will ask, which aeroplane? When was it hijacked? We want to know both the spatial and the temporal properties together. We cannot do away with the temporal property for the completion of knowledge intuitively in our mind. That is suggestive of the fusion of space and time intuitively in our mind. Okay, now go into quantum mechanics. Space cannot be confined to 4 dimensions. I already introduced you about the M theory, F theory, GUT, grand unified theory, the attempt at the unification of the 4 fundamental forces of nature, which is also termed as a quest for a theory of everything. This is where the best brains in physics are struggling now. If that is developed, that is the end of physics. Stephen Hawking had predicted that physics will be ending by 1980. GUT will be developed. Then it did not. He extended the deadline to 2000. It did not. Things are only getting more and more complicated now. Now, supergravity theory, relativistic quantum theory, string theory, these are some attempts at the unification of these 4 fundamental forces of nature. In order that the mathematics of these theories be consistent, this is still far from consistent, at least to be partially consistent, scientists must invite at least 5th dimension, 6th dimension, 7th dimension, 8th dimension, 9th dimension, 10th dimension, 11 dimensions for string theory. See, if you see a picture here, no, multi-dimensional space. This is the Halabi and Yao are 2 Japanese science physicists. Extra dimensions they are attributing to the universe in order that calculations may make sense. When they add extra dimensions to the universe, how should we understand? Universe is no longer material. The proximity between matter and the transmatter, the temporal and the transtemporal, the physical and the metaphysical, theologically between matter and spirit, proximity only increases as dimensions increases. It is here we say that the glorification of matter in resurrection is no nonsense. Although we are extended in 3 dimensions, our universe is not really 3-dimensional. Okay, multi-dimensional. As the dimensions increase, we have greater and greater freedom. The chalk, Paul Dirac breaking the chalk into 2 and still the chalk remaining unbroken. That is, let us say, is the 5th dimension. Each broken piece of chalk turning out to be a complete chalk. Let us say this is the 6th dimension. Is there anybody who can walk over the water here? Better to ask the question, is there anybody here who cannot walk over the water? Let us say,
unless you are swimming further.
No, Wycliffe. In the 7th dimension, if it is a reality, walking over the water is perfectly a consistent law of nature. 8th dimension, the doors remaining closed and someone entering in. Jesus in resurrection. 8th dimension, if the universe is 8-dimensional, these sort of paradoxes are no longer paradoxical. 5 loaves of bread for the multitude of 5,000. Let us say, imaginatively only I am using these analogies. In a 9-dimensional space, this is no nonsense. This is no miracle at all. In 9-dimensional world, if our universe is 9-dimensional, this is perfectly consistent with the law of nature of that nature in that universe. Padre Pio is said to be present here and at the same time celebrating Mass here and participating in a funeral somewhere else. Bilocation or multiple presence, a traditional discussion in theology and philosophy. In a 10-dimensional space, this is no nonsense. All of us can do that if the universe is 10-dimensional. Now, some calculations say universe must have 100 dimensions. I am wondering, of course, these are still at the speculative level, but hermeneutically, we have the theological freedom to appropriate our theological themata within this fabric. That is why such religious belief gains only greater respectability with the emergence of modern physics. Yeah, we have only 5 minutes left. More or less, so the point here is this. Okay, the multiple dimensions of space. Matter is extended in space, extended in 3 dimensions. Now we say the same matter which appeared to be, which is only apparently extended in 3 dimensions, is extended in several dimensions, in multiple dimensions. Still there is extension. Even if it has 1,000 dimensions, this is still extended. Therefore, matter is never spirit. Spirit is beyond all extensions. It doesn't have the confinements of space and time. Okay, let us go to, this will take a little longer time. I will have to occupy. Then I will stop my discussion here. Next week, I will continue with this discussion and I will ask Kuruvala also to continue with chaos theory, or if something else is required, that also will be done. Then we will do the conclusion. Little more about the relativity theory I should be discussing now. Then only we can understand time. Time not only going. Wycliffe, how old are you? Would you like to disclose your age to the group, Wycliffe?
I'm 53 now.
Very good. Thank you, Wycliffe. Next year, how old are you going to be, Wycliffe? Next
I'll be
year.
54.
No, Wycliffe. Next year, you will be 52.
Ah.
Next year, you will be 52.
Will you be subtracting?
Let us wait for the next class. Okay. Einstein's understanding of the dilation of clocks. That will bring us to close to the idea of eternity, where there is no duration of time will be infinite. Time stands still. That is the scientific support for the theological category of eternity. We need to be explaining it in some scientific detail, so I am not going into that now for want of time. Is heaven a place or state? Very good question from Isaac Richard. Given this understanding of the multidimensionality of space, we must say heaven is beyond all dimensions. Heaven can never be a place. Place means something localized. Localization presupposes corporeality or materiality. Heaven is beyond all space and time. Heaven has neither beginning nor end, therefore not bound by time. Heaven is not extended in space, therefore it is not a place. It is not localized. Therefore, this is a qualitative state or qualitative experience, so something likewise we have to frame. Okay. But unfortunately, the catechetical understanding of heaven and so on is that this is a beautiful place where we are going to after death and so on. So this is the sort of deconstruction of the old-fashioned theologies that we science religion theorists will have to be doing. Oh, so thank you, Isaac, for that question. If there are no other questions, shall we wind up for today? Next week, we will continue with the understanding of time. Then we will sum up all what we have said about the theological categories, miracles, laws of nature, resurrection, eternity, and so. So thank you then. Bye for now. We will meet next Friday.